Welcome to the Regina Queen Show. I have here with me Charlette Washington. Hi, Charlette. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, Regina. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great. And we would like to thank you all for being here with us today on the Regina Queen Show to bring awareness against gun violence, senseless gun violence. Charlette Washington is here to share her son's story. Two brothers were murdered in Odessa, Texas, and she would like to share their story to empower parents not to give up hope and to empower parents to be a part of your community, to empower your community to help prevent senseless gun violence. Thank you so much for being here with me on the Regina Queen Show. Charletta, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you here with me to share your son's story.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. And how are you feeling today?
I'm well. I'm well. God is good. He is faithful. His mercies endure always. So I'm good. I'm good.
Great. And I know sharing our stories is very sensitive at times. It takes us into that vortex of reliving the moment.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And can you share your son's story of what happened to them in Odessa, Texas?
Yes, ma'am. We are a small basketball family in terms of we've got 5 kids. My husband had 3 from previous relationship, and we have 2 together. We lost our oldest son. His name is Jonathan. About a year prior to losing our youngest son, his name is Joshua. They both were murdered here in Odessa, Texas.
Yes.
So if you'd like for me to continue, I'll just tell you how things went down. The reason I wanted to be on the broadcast tonight is just so that we could bring awareness to all families all over the place. And your platform is for mothers unified against gun violence and domestic violence. And so I just wanted to reach out and touch that group that has been affected in so many different ways. You know, if you haven't walked a mile in those shoes, you just don't know what that is like. And it only took me almost 2 years ago to find out what that was like. And so over the course of the last year and a half, almost 2 years, I've really gotten a grip on where we're going with this. And I just want to ensure that our stories are told, that our boys are not forgotten, and that mothers and fathers all around can rest assured that no matter what happens, and every incident is a little different. We've got moms and dads who have lost boys and girls and just all kinds of individuals in their families, and somebody hasn't been held accountable for it. We've also got parents who have people who have been held accountable. But nevertheless, the common denominator is that we've lost something special to us. So I'll start out with our oldest boy. Again, his name is Jonathan. Very kind-hearted, very handsome young man. We don't make ugly children, let me tell you. We have beautiful kids. Their pictures are next to me tonight. This is Joshua on my right hand, and this is Jonathan. You may not be able to see him very well on my left hand. So Jonathan was taking a walk one evening to go over to a household to meet up with a young lady who he was just friends with. Unbeknownst to him, the young lady's father was having a domestic issue going on at his household. Away from the house, our son was going over to meet the man's daughter. So he and his wife had gotten into an altercation and they fought. And he left. Our son Jonathan stopped over at this particular house to visit this daughter of the man who murdered him. And they were visiting outside. She went in the house, is what we're told, and some kind of argument ensued outside. And our son went to walk away and walked down the sidewalk, and the assailant raised a gun and shot him. And it pierced him in his head, and we lost him. He died that day. Not knowing our younger two children were leaving that part of town to come home to our home that night, and they passed the street where they could see the ambulance and the policeman, not knowing that their brother was the one laying there deceased. So they came home. Mom and Dad were already in bed, and they came in and they told us that there was an altercation that happened down a particular street here in Odessa, and that it must have been something bad. But of course, we had no details at the time, so it was very hard to hear that. But we didn't know who it was. Went to bed that night, and later, early on in that morning, 2 or 3, I believe, we got a phone call, and they were confirming that it was our oldest son. He is my bonus son because he is my husband's son, but nevertheless, he is our son. And so we lost him to senseless gun violence. And the thing that I wanted to point out tonight to make clear was both the assailants that murdered our sons, our families are intertwined in some shape, form, or fashion. The gentleman the young man that killed our son, Jonathan, his sister and I were very good friends the majority of our lives, and I don't hold them accountable. So, I love his family. They were good people. I just don't know what happened with that, but I would have never known that he would have done something like that. And then, of course, he sent word trying to apologize, saying that he didn't know it was our son. Well, it doesn't matter whose son it is. Gun violence is senseless, and it should never be used. And gone are the days where people, if you just got to scrap it out in the front yard and get it over with, they don't do that anymore. They want to pull guns and they want to shoot, and so that's the point I was wanting to make tonight. So our son, we lost him, and not even a year later, on June 6th, 2021, we got a call. It was a Sunday. I remember it because my husband called me and asked me if I would make him chili. This is in June. So who makes chili in June? It's very vivid to me. So I stopped at the store and I got all the ingredients and I came home. My husband worked late that evening. And so by the time he got home, I had prepared the chili and I was sitting out on the front porch, just kind of sitting there. And it's so strange because it was so powerfully peaceful. And my husband tells me as he was pulling up that evening, we live in a cul-de-sac, and he was making the circle in the cul-de-sac. And he got out of his truck. He said he looked at me and I looked deep in thought to him. He said he'll never forget it. It was just something that wasn't normal. It was like I wasn't even there, he said. Well, unbeknownst to he and myself, at that moment, our youngest son, was being murdered in some apartment complexes to the east of town. And so, but we didn't know it at the moment. So we came in the house and he prepared some chili, sat down at the table to eat. And the worst phone call that could come came. And we got a phone call asking me to call Joshua to make sure that he was okay. And I had been with Joshua early on that morning. I had wanted him to go to church with me. Oh, how I wish he had gone. But I cannot stress enough that parents can't say to themselves, if only this had happened, or if only I had said this or done that. That's just not the way this goes. And so early on that morning, I had saw him and I dropped him off over to his girlfriend's house on my way to church. So it was about noon. And it was the last time I seen my baby alive. And he went to close the door and he stopped and he opened the door and he said, oh yeah, when you get out of church, come back and get me. I'm going to go home with you, because everybody knows on a Sunday you're going home to a meal. So I figured he wanted to come back and eat. And so I said, okay. And he closed the door and it was the last time I saw him. And I went to church, went through service, had a great day. I got out of church, remembered to call him. I called him and I said, do you want me to pick you up? And he said, well, I'm already out with some friends. These same friends were the ones that he went over to those apartment complexes with. So he said, I'll tell you what, in a little while, I'll just have them drop me off at your house. And I said, okay. I was just checking with you because you wanted me to check with you. And so that was the last time I heard this voice. And so when I came home and I made the chili, we did get the phone call. And the young lady that called me said, call Joshua and make sure he's okay. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, he's okay. I just talked to him, not even 3-4 hours ago. And she was like, no, call him. Somebody is saying that he's been shot 7 times. And, my mind just vacillated between all kinds of things, like who would want to do something? Who would want to shoot Jonathan? He was the sweetest boy. Who would want to shoot Joshua? And so I just studied myself. I just really studied myself. And I told my husband about it. And I said, okay, let me call you back. I hung up the phone and I dialed his number. Of course, no answer. And I kept calling and no answer. I probably knew then that, something was really, really wrong. So my husband and I, we got the directions to the young lady that had called me. She said they were at these apartment complexes that, I wouldn't think that he would be at because they were so far away from where he lived. So we rushed out of the house immediately, jumped in the truck and just went over there. And as soon as we pulled up, there was a lot of commotion going on. And we approached the area where they said that he was laying. And from the breezeway, I could look down the breezeway 30 feet away, and I could see my son's legs on the ground. And, there was so much in me wanted to just come apart. But I thank God for his steadying power. And so what happened to Joshua was he got a phone call. He was at his girlfriend, is what I'm gleaning. And, our kids sometimes do things that they shouldn't do. And he went to take some 2 ounces of marijuana. And, over to the apartment complex, a young lady called him. By the time he got to the complex, there were some boys, not the young lady that made the phone call, but some boys that came to the car and snatched it out of his hand and took off running. And of course, Joshua jumped out and ensued and chased the young man. And all that I can gather right now is that as he chased him, they ended up going up 3 flights of stairs at this apartment complex. Shooting ensued, and by the time Joshua made it back down the 3 flights, he had been shot in his back and in his right wrist, and then he collapsed there at the bottom of the stairwell. There were some people there who tried to administer some help to him, and he just didn't make it. So by the time we got there, I kind of knew that he was gone. And, it was probably a day etched, much like the day you give birth to your kiddos and stuff. In my mind, that will never go away. The young man that killed our son Jonathan is serving 40 years now. I believe it's 40 years. He was 50. And the young man that shot my son was 16. And my son was 22. And we are awaiting trial now. So that's where we're standing. And so, I wanted to do this broadcast tonight because, again, you're going to have some parents who will get justice for their children, and then you're going to have some parents who may not get justice for their children. But I know a master in the heavens who will hold court one day, and there will not necessarily need to be lawyers because he is King of Kings and he is Lord of Lords. And whatever I do to the glory of God. And I want them to understand that even if we don't get justice on this side, we shall get justice in that main court in heaven. God knows the details about everything that happened. He knows everybody that was involved. There were certainly other people involved in my son's murder who may not have pulled the trigger, but they certainly were in suit of him as well. And so God knows the details. And so I'm leaving it at his feet. I'm leaving it in his hand. But as long as I get the opportunity to keep our sons' names and their memories alive, I'm going to take that. So Regina, I thank you for allowing me to come through this door that you opened for me. And I'm open to any questions you might have or anything that I may have missed.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your son's story.
Yes, ma'am.
Whoa, 2 murders, 2 brothers. I would like to ask you, first of all, I admire your strength to
You know,
encounter
God
2
will,
murders of 2
yes, ma'am.
brothers.
God will say the joy of the
And,
Lord is our strength, and so that's where my strength comes from.
okay. Charlotte, how did gun violence impact your family's life?
You know, that is a powerful question. You know, the first thing that comes to my mind is gun violence took something from us that is could never be replaced. And gun violence didn't have the right to take something that didn't belong to them. It affected us as parents. It affected us as siblings, as grandmothers, grandfathers, nieces, nephews, cousins. Our family just was jolted in so many ways. You know, we have spent several holidays without the both of them. We have spent their birthdays without them. We've had a balloon release, you know, in honor of Joshua. Um, you know, it affected us in such a way. Um, you think about packing a gun with you so that you can stay safe, something that you don't ever really think about doing. You start to see the world a whole lot differently than you've seen it before. I mean, as an adult, you know that there are dangers out there, but never would I have thought that that danger would have knocked on my door. And now that I've been at this a while, you know, I know some people would say, why me? You know, if it happened to them. I mean, when that death sickle comes through the earth like it doesn't have a respect of person. You know, there are short graves and long graves in the cemetery. And so it's affected us in a way where we learn to appreciate life a lot more. We learn to try not to struggle with each other as much as we have. We learn to appreciate the relationships that we have still. My daughter, Amia Hovic, she's probably looking, sent me a text the other day, a TikTok that said, Mama, I finally understand. And she put a phrase that I always used to tell her and her brother. And I would tell them, y'all don't fight each other because when mom and dad are gone, you are all you have. So she's understanding these things now because I've always told them ever since they was little, as we were growing them up to try to get them more independent, that we're not going to always be here. So you got to learn how to be independent and love each other and depend on each other should we not be here. You know, as parents, we always try and be ready so that if something happened to us, we leave something for our children. So it's not normal most times for a parent to have to put a child away. So that gun violence affected us in a way that, you know, the dominoes went the wrong way. Instead of our children putting us away, we have had to put 2 away. And, you know, it caused friction between families that should not be there. Our families were intertwined in some ways on both sides. We had friends and family members on both sides of families who had individuals in their families that murdered our sons. So it wasn't even necessarily a stranger. It was somebody that was connected to our family somehow. So, you know, that made it all the worse. And then, you know, of course,
Doesn't discriminate.
it doesn't discriminate. It leaves siblings behind, you know. Joshua and Emil and Travis, our other son, they grew up in the same household. Travis is away right now. He'll be home soon. But Joshua and Emil were so close that she didn't know a day without him. And so for the past year and a half, she's had to learn how to be here without him, you know. And they were so very close. They went everywhere together. He was such, you know, he was such a light. I mean, he walked in the room, you know, he just was really sweet guy. He didn't see a bad bone in anybody's body. He always tried to see the good in everybody. But I always tried to teach them that not everybody is going to appreciate that, and not everybody is going to return that, reciprocate that. I saw
Right.
a Tyler Perry
Well,
sitcom one day, ma'am.
mhm.
And the
Yeah.
young lady says to the mother, "You prepared your daughter for success in the world. You just didn't prepare for someone like me. And so that resonated with me, in that we try to bring our kids up to be good people, and to be honorable and, respectful and nice, sweet. Well, you don't really never think about how do we make them deal with people who may be polar opposite of that. And so gun violence has changed us drastically. But I would
Okay.
say that
Yeah,
no
I
matter
can
what
imagine.
you do,
I can
yes,
imagine. And then I would like to ask you too, Charletta, do you feel are you guys satisfied with the do you feel that you've gotten justice for was it Jonathan?
so for
Because
Jonathan,
you're awaiting trial for the guy
Joshua.
who murdered Joshua. You're awaiting trial. But for Jonathan, do you feel like you guys your family has gotten justice?
Um, I'll put it this way. I don't know what kind of justice can justify that we can never see our boys again on this side of the veil, but we're happy with what we did get, because this particular person, he's got to pay for the consequences. We have to forgive and move on, but there are consequences for everything that we do. And so we want them to have to pay the consequences for taking our sons' lives. But as far as justice is concerned, we're okay with what Jonathan's murderer got in terms of his sentence, and we still await the one for Joshua. And so y'all pray for us. We want to stay in the will of God, and God has a court in heaven as well. And people may not agree with me, and they may even be shocked to hear me say it. I hope to get to heaven one day, especially see my son. I know I will, but I hope I get to see the young man who killed my son. There's no reason for the devil to get a victory out of this. So I'm praying that this young man will ask God to forgive him and be saved, and so that when we all get together, we can fellowship as brothers and sisters, where there is no more dying or hate or anything there. So that's what we want more than anything. We want a win-win situation, but we do want for each of these individuals to pay a penalty for taking something so very special from our family.
I agree with that. Charlotte, how is it in Odessa, Texas? How's the gun violence there? Is it rapid? Is there a high percentage?
I would say that it has picked up quite a bit. I've never felt uncomfortable in my hometown. I grew up here, and I've never really felt uncomfortable. But what I'm noticing is an uptick in gun violence, especially among the younger population now. The younger people, as I said, this young man was 16. Like, how are you getting these guns? And what is your mindset that you would want to shoot somebody? First you robbed him and then you shot him, and it's just no reason to take a gun and hurt somebody or kill somebody. Gone are the days where you got out in the street and scrapped it out, and you two live to see another day. And so I think these video games, I think these songs that they listen to, some of them are called battle songs. Some of these people listen to this music just to hype them up so they can go out and do these things, and so they haven't stopped to think about the long-term ramifications for 1 second of making a wrong decision. And so for that, there's got to be some penalties. And as far as Odessa, I do know that the Texas, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Attorney General's, yes, sorry. The Texas Attorney General's office. Most people may not know, but if you lose a loved one to gun violence, and it's, there are some terms where you can be compensated, and they may have that in other states. So I encourage people to check with their Attorney General's office, because they may, what they do is I got my husband and I got victim statement papers, and we had to fill them out. and they came from the courts here in Odessa. And what they do is they say, do you want to file for civil compensation, or to make the family pay because you lost a loved one, or the state of Texas would in some instances refund your money or help you put a loved one away. We're so thankful that we had life insurance to put the boys away. But there are some resources. There's just not enough resources to combat gun violence in Odessa. And you never really knew that it was an issue, except that here lately it's been an uptick, and maybe it's been an uptick to me because we finally had to experience it so personal, so up and close on our family. So I would say Odessa has picked up. We've had, it's not uncommon to hear the news at night and know that somebody has been shot or shot at or murdered.
Yes, and my heart goes out to you and your family. And again, I send my deepest condolences to you,
Yes, ma'am.
and family.
I so appreciate the opportunity to sit here tonight and to be able to talk to you, be able to put our boys before people, to let them know that, lives are precious and we need to start valuing lives, our own lives and other people's lives. And if we don't do this, we'll never see these kind of things in. And we need to go back to, as a community, to raising all the kids together. There was a time when the community raised them, that adage, it takes a village to raise children. We need to do that again, and we need to hold them to a standard where they respect life, where they have some respect for their elders, where they don't seek to get guns to hurt each other and things of that nature, is what I hope that this platform and this thing will do for tonight. One other thing, I want to give a shout out to Michelle, whose son Alec was murdered, and they have not found who his killer is. And so I encourage people, if you know things, to reach out to your police department. This younger generation talks about don't snitch. Well, you better learn to snitch, because it could be you or your family, and you wouldn't want somebody to be walking around here who was responsible for taking your loved one from you, and not be held accountable. And so, I want to thank Michelle for introducing you to me, Regina. I thank you so much for the platform that you have. I want people to know that you understand our fight, our cross that we have to bear, because you do the same thing. You have a son who went through gun violence. So we just want to tell you thank you for how you picked up the cause and you have ran with it. I'm so super proud of you for that.
Thank you. And it has been an honor to be here with other angel moms.
I love your term, angel moms.
Yes, it's really been a blessing, and it has inspired and encouraged me, to stay above the water, to continue to be the voice for our children. And far as us being victims, and I believe in us having, being treated fairly as victims as we encounter trauma and going back and forth, to court, and I want to stand and fight for victims to be treated fairly. And some victims are, not being acknowledged. They're being left out with information that they need to know. They're being left out on resources. And I just really don't think that's fair, because we have already lost enough. We lost a loved one. And to coming along behind losing a loved one, people are losing their mental, they're going to depression and anxiety, and, they can't cope through life. So, and to have so many resources out there for us victims. And I do believe that, and would like to start, voting more and fighting for laws to be more strict laws to be put in place for these perpetrators who are out there committing the senseless gun violence, and for people who are there at the crime scene to be held accountable as well. And because some people get away with murder, some people are being set up, and some people are getting away with being an accessory to murder. So they need to make the laws more strict to start holding people who are involved and who are there at the time of someone's demise, of being murdered, to
Yeah.
start holding these people accountable.
Yeah. Well, you know,
So
you and I
it
discussed
comes
earlier.
it comes
You and
with more.
I,
It comes with more than just, for me, it's coming with more than just to, I want to be able, to bring moms together to, share these stories and, be the voice for our loved ones. And I also want us moms to, start voting more for these laws to be put in place to be more strict.
yes, I agree. I agree. There needs to be some things implemented that will discourage people from doing these kind of things, because if they don't pay a price for it and they're not held accountable, then this will continue. So I certainly agree.
Yes. Yes, and we have quite a few comments here for you, and I guess you can piggyback to them later. And you do have some people here that's asking you questions and everything. And I just want to thank you so much, Charletta, for being a voice for Joshua and Jonathan. And may their name carry on, and that just know that your son's name, they did not die in vain, and their story continued here on the Regina Queen Show and will always be carried on from here on. And for people out there in Odessa, Texas, I suggest that, more moms of violence come together to advocate for their communities, because it's very important for advocates to come together and advocate for their communities to prevent senseless domestic and gun violence in our communities.
I agree. I thank you so
So
much for your platform, for your Facebook page, United Women Against Gun Violence and Domestic Violence, correct?
yes,
Did I say
United
that?
Women Empowerment Against Gun and Domestic Violence. That
I
is my
suggest people go.
organization. That is my
Yes.
movement.
Yes, I suggest people go and visit it, and I'm so thankful that I was invited to be a part of that family, because,
Of the movement. Of the movement.
well, and it's also a family because not everybody
Exactly. It's
is in
both.
that
It's
position.
both.
And when
Mhm.
you begin to network with people who understand where you're coming from, it helps, because often people feel like they're alone, and you're not alone. And you have so many different people you can reach out to who can be, vital assets to you. And you can talk to each other and understand where you're coming from. You can lift each other up. You can hold each other up when you're weak and hold each other accountable, and just so thankful for that family. I would have never wanted to be in this family, but since I'm here now, I'm going to be salt of the earth and light to the world while I'm in this family.
Yes. Thank you for that. And yes, we are a family. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. And you have Amelia Hobart.
That's my
Hobart,
daughter. Hi,
your daughter.
honey.
Yeah,
Yes,
she's
ma'am.
here with you. She said, "I love you, Mama."
I love you the
Thank you
most.
for supporting your mom. We appreciate you so much. Yes, help us spread awareness to prevent gun violence. Yes, and shout out again to you, Michelle Diaz from Odessa, Texas.
Yes.
Her son was murdered in Odessa, Texas as well. And we're seeking and fighting and asking for justice so that her family may be at peace. And we love
I
you,
want all
Michelle.
mothers. I want all
Striving. She's
mothers
a
to
very,
know
very big supporter.
that she is. Yes, she is. I want all mothers to know on this last note that God is in the details and He will avenge us.
Yes. And thank you all, Angel Moms, for coming aboard, being a part of the United Women Empowerment Against Gun and Domestic Violence. Help spread awareness to prevent violence in your communities, in your homes, and be the voice, be the solution, not the problem. We thank you all. And if you would like to say anything to angel moms out there, angel parents, because we have fathers too who have lost their children, as well as your husband. What would you say? What message would you like to give?
I would say to them, every dark room has a light switch that can be turned on so that the light can come in. And so that let that light be the light of the world. And in our hope, our light, our presence comes when Jesus comes in the room. I understand that not everybody believes that, but I just want to be the example. If people see me and they say, wow, where's she getting it from? That is my source. That is my resource. So I would say to all angel mom and dads that if they will lay those things, those issues, those hurts at the feet of the cross, the master will take care of us. He's done it so far. He'll continue. And don't give up. We're going to get through this together. And our children would be proud of us to know that we kept moving, we kept going, and we keep their names alive and their value and in our heart. And so, it's okay to grieve our children. That's fine. But let's make them proud. And each of us know our children, and we know what would make them want to be proud of us, and that's to move forward and keep going and be a light to the world and help others as they go through things. So that's what I would say to them.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for that powerful message. And thank you so much, Amia.
For having
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure to share your brother's story, because they deserve to have their story out there to encourage others and to help prevent others, to help empower others to prevent senseless gun violence, because our youth, we really need our youth today. They are our next future.
Yes.
Doctors, lawyers, scientists, musicians, engineers. We really need our youth. So it's very important that we keep bringing in awareness against violence.
Yes, ma'am. I agree.
Yes. And you have a beautiful night, and I'll see you around. Thank you for being a guest here on the Regina Queen Show, United Women Empowerment Against Gun and Domestic Violence. In unity, we stand.
Thank you for having me.
You're
God
welcome.
bless you.